And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa Corporate and Investment Banking, proud sponsor of South African Auto Week 2025. Good evening. Welcome to the program. I'm Stephen Grootes, 9 minutes after 6. Obviously, for me, the story that has just been staggering, and yet I shouldn't be surprised, is around what the SIU has found in its interim report at the Tembisa Hospital. And I made the point quite deliberately when I introduced the show 9 minutes ago. The Gauteng Health Department allowed this to happen. Let's be clear. This was not just someone at Tembisa Hospital or a group of people at Tembisa Hospital. If you look at a brief history of the Gauteng Health Department, there's the fire at Charlotte Matreke. Remember, you couldn't open the emergency ward during a pandemic for however long it was. Just as a reminder, by the way, when the Tembisa Hospital thing first came to light, Ashley Mtunzi, he's passed away since then, but he was the CEO, and the disciplinary inquiry didn't start for a full year. You want to tell me you're serious about governance? I mean, really, it is just incredible. The life is a Dameni scandal. Now, on one level, things do happen in Gauteng. It's the biggest health department in the country. I understand that, and I accept that. But surely we can have better than this. 2 billion rand from a hospital that's only 840 beds. I mean, it is just astonishing. We'll get a view from Mark Haywood. He knows all of this much better than I do. He'll have deeper insights than I do in the next couple of moments. Electricity prices, there's now going to be a big review by NERSA. And you'll hear from Professor Samson Mamphweli about this. SANEDI will be looking at it. Also, Chris Yelland, you know him as well, of course. One of the things I don't get is, firstly, how does an inquiry tell us anything we don't know about the price of electricity? Couldn't you just read Eskom's electricity tariff application? And it's all there, I'm afraid to say, in pretty difficult black and white. But the other thing is that the suggestion from NERSA is you include a legacy charge, which basically means I have to pay for the electricity my father used, or my children must pay for the electricity I'm using now. Seriously, a legacy charge? Someone has to explain this to me. How did Busisiwe Mavuso put it? That you're asking the customers of the future to pay for the electricity that was used in the past. I mean, is there anything else that you would do that for? I can't see it. I mean, I don't want to start Monday in this way, but still, it is astonishing. Martin Kingston's the chair at Business for South Africa. They're looking at getting involved in Joburg. A lot of sort of heat on this Joburg situation at the moment. I think if you consider the service delivery issues, that's one thing. The Helen Ziller factor, the sort of story about her is sort of another. But certainly very, very interesting. And then medical aid as well to come before 7 o'clock. And really looking forward to speaking to Claire Johnson, the lead singer at Mango Groove. You'll hear from her from 7:30 in How I Make My Money. I know you'll have a view on how a situation developed that saw so much money being stolen from a small hospital. 011 8830702 0214460567 and voice notes tonight on 072 702 1702.
The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
and DSTV channel 856.
Well, confirmation from the Special Investigating Unit today. They've confirmed 3, what they call unrelated syndicates, were able to steal 2 billion rand from the Tembisa Hospital in Gauteng in a period of around 4 years. The syndicates included the Malmela Syndicate, run by Hangwani Morgan Malmela. They stole, according to the SIU, 816 million rand. The Maziboko Syndicate, run by Rudolf Maziboko, they stole 283 million rand. And what's called Syndicate X, which stole around 600 million rand. Mark Haywood is a social activist, someone who's been active in the health sector for many, many years. Mark, good evening and thanks for your time. So the investigation links people working at the hospital, decision makers and officials. It includes people who are submitting fake invoices. But how could all of this happen at really such a small institution? How could just a few people steal so much money?
Good evening, Stephen. And that's the billion rand question, I guess. And the answer to it is simply that there has been a complete breakdown in governance systems and oversight systems in the Gauteng Health Department that has gone on for more than a decade, which has meant that a department that has, I think, the second biggest budget in the province this year, 67 billion rand budget, is wide open if you're brazen enough and evil enough to want to take money that is intended to save people's lives and provide quality healthcare systems. And that is what has been going on. And as you say, what the SIU has found, that at Tembisa Hospital, it's this kind of unholy alliance of corrupt businessmen, and some of those names that you've mentioned are well politically connected, with more lowly officials as low as clerks at hospitals, and I believe officials within the Gauteng Health Department. That was one omission in the report today, and put the three together, and it's open season, and they stole 2 billion rand.
You talk about a breakdown in cost controls, and I hate to ask this question, but I must. Is it a deliberate breakdown in cost controls in the Gauteng Health Department? We've been here before with the Gauteng Health Department.
Well, if it's not deliberate, the amount of times that it happens makes you ask some very big questions about why it can go on and on. You know, a previous SIU report, I think a couple of years ago, looked at the revitalization of this hospital in Carltonville. 500 million rand blown there. The hospital isn't even open now. You know, there were questions around the tendering processes after the Charlotte Maxeke fire, and indeed some suspicion that the fire may even have been set in order to create the basis for further expenditure. It's just gone on and on and on, which for me makes you have to feel suspicious that this is a system in place to facilitate theft. It's not just one accident, one vulnerability after another after another.
In the past, this is a terrible thing to say, in the past, when scandals like this erupted, someone like me would ask someone like you what needs to be done, what needs to change, and you would often give us a very cogent answer. I have to change the question to ask you now if you think anything ever will change in Gauteng.
Not without very serious intervention. You know, that question was asked in the press conference today, and the MEC told the assembled members of the press conference that basically she has now sorted out the finances of the Gauteng Health Department, that corruption is being eliminated and all the necessary measures are being put in place. I don't believe that is the case for 1 second, because I see on a daily basis from talking to healthcare workers in hospital continued anecdotal evidence of theft, of inflating of prices of foodstuffs, of basic medical equipment. So it needs a very radical intervention at the level of complete change of leadership, but also at the level of putting in place systems and structures of oversight, ensuring transparency and openness. I don't know if you remember, Stephen, but you know, during the COVID-19 scandals that again engulfed the Gauteng Health Department, for a few brief months, the Treasury published every month in Gauteng what they called expenditure disclosure reports. So you could see live time what money was going out where and for what purpose. And from that, we were able to pick up numerous instances of inflated and exaggerated prices and corruption. Once they saw that journalists were seeing what was going on, they stopped publishing the expenditure disclosure reports and said that they couldn't do that any longer because of the protection of the POPIA Act. So there just isn't really the will. You will hear lip service, we're going to clean this up. It's been said time and time again, and there's no reason to believe that there's will to do that.
Mark Hayward, thank you so much. The social activist, been very active in our healthcare sector for many, many years. I know you'll have a view on this. 011 8830 702 021 446 0567 and voice notes this evening on 072 702 1702.
The Money Show on 702.
Monday to Friday, 6 to 8 p.m.
Well, I'm sure you're aware of just how expensive electricity has become. Even the Minister, Josienso Ramakgopa, has made that point. If you look at the mistakes that have been made by NERSA and others, the amount of money that Eskom needs for the future, the price is just going to go up. But now, NERSA is holding a market inquiry into the entire pricing mechanism. They're asking SANEDI to do that. Professor Samson Mamphweli is the head of the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation's Energy Secretariat at SANEDI. Samson, good evening. It's good to talk to you again on The Money Show. NERSA wants to look at what is keeping costs so high. But isn't that information already pretty clear? Isn't it in Eskom's tariff applications every couple of years?
Good evening, Stephen and the listeners. This is a directive, so to speak, from the Minister of Electricity and Energy for various entities within his department, including NERSA, SANEDI, Eskom, and others, to look at the electricity pricing. And NERSA becomes an entity that is kind of at the forefront, because NERSA is basically responsible for the cost of supply framework, which is used when the licensed electricity distributors in South Africa apply for the tariff hikes, including Eskom and the municipalities. So what is happening is that there are various factors that all these entities are looking at. The pricing framework itself in the main, various aspects on the regulatory side of things, and also Eskom is busy developing what we call the wholesale electricity market through NTSA, National Transmission Company of South Africa. And all these efforts are geared towards looking at areas where there could be some savings on the electricity pricing for all the consumers. If you look at the cost of supply framework itself, it looks at the tariff setting. It talks about the electricity distributor having to conduct the cost of supply studies that looks at the revenue requirements, the cost functionalization in where they identify the separate different cost drivers, your kilowatt hours, your demand, and look at the various customer segments, as well as the cost allocations based on the different customer categories. You would know, Stephen, that the households are also classified differently from the industry customers and things like that. So there are areas where there could be improvement in terms of the reducing the cost of electricity or maintaining it, so to speak, at an acceptable kind of pricing structure. And you are correct, the price of electricity is just going high. We've done studies over the years. For more than 20 years, the cost of electricity pricing has just been going high and high. And if you look at the Eskom retail tariff plan that has been approved by NERSA, we're looking at close to 30%, close to 25% of electricity increase in the next 3 years between now and 2027. So the minister is very much concerned about that part.
Okay, so would this mean then, after this review, that it would then be that electricity would actually be somehow cheaper to produce? What I don't get is that physics doesn't necessarily, the laws of physics, how much coal costs, how much it costs to move electricity from one place to another to get it to my house, that doesn't change just because we review the billing system.
That is correct. So in terms of the actual physics and engineering side of things, the actual cost of supply will not necessarily change. It is the regulatory side of things that impact the actual calculation of the cost of supply and the minimum allowable profit that could be changed. And also the other part is, if you look at the NTCSA market structure, the South African wholesale electricity market and all that, that market structure is being structured such that at some point you might realize that households might be able to pay exactly for what they use and for some services associated with what they use, and that may go directly to the actual cost of supply, on the side of the households and industry as well. So if you play around with your regulatory side of things, you might be able to maintain the electricity price. One of the things, without divulging much, Stephen, because this is something that SANEDI and other entities are still going to look deep into. If you look at the way the electricity distribution takes place between municipalities and ESCOM, municipalities don't buy directly from ESCOM generation. They buy from ESCOM distribution. And there is a certain markup between ESCOM generation and ESCOM distribution to cater for the infrastructure that ESCOM distribution has got to municipalities and things like that. The question is, how do we then structure that aspect between ESCOM generation, ESCOM distribution, which is now under National Transmission Company South Africa, and the municipalities, whether there could be savings between those three trade-offs as well.
Okay. So NERSA also wants to look at what they call a legacy charge. And my first understanding of a legacy charge when I hear that phrase is it basically means that people would have to pay now for electricity that was consumed in the past. That won't be popular.
That is correct. So basically, what that charge means is that they look at where they're not billing, you don't have a meter, or where there's been delay in reading of your meter. They then look at what you consumed in the past, and then they calculate. There's a standard actually, an international standard that is used to calculate that amount, where they can then look at it and say, in the past, let's say during the winter month, this is how much this industry partner used in terms of electricity, and because they did not go and check your meter, or something else happened during that period where they don't have actual data, then they estimate based on your historic usage, and then they can then charge you based on that. That featured when SANEDI was busy with the issues around the city power and ESCOM on their billing side of things, where ESCOM applied that kind of principle.
Professor, thank you so much. Professor Samson Mamphweli is head of the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation's Energy Secretariat at SANEDI. Listening to that, Chris Yelland, the MD at EE Business Intelligence. Chris, good evening. Will this review, do you think this inquiry, lead to cheaper electricity prices?
No, I think, it's very unclear to me how, they're going to suddenly change pricing structure. Really, you do not want a price that is too high. It's bad for economy. It's bad for customers.
Okay, Chris, I'm just going to ask you I don't know if there's something happening with your mouthpiece. If you could maybe just move around a little bit, we might just get a stronger line. From what I understand, from what you were saying, you don't believe this will lead to a major change.
No, and I think one's got to accept that the only thing that is going to result in change is a highly competitive market. At the moment, we have a cost-plus kind of pricing arrangement, and it's highly regulated, and we've got to figure out what the costs are. And the people who do this figuring out have really no idea of what the real costs are. And really, we need to move away from a cost-plus pricing arrangement to a pricing arrangement that is based on competition in the market. And this will lead to the right price of electricity. The right price is not a price that is very low, because that will result in a loss of investment into the industry. And the right price is not a price that is too high. That damages the economy and makes us less competitive. The right price is determined not by trying to calculate the costs and putting on a markup. The right price is determined by competition, so that the most efficient producers of electricity are the ones that have preference in the market and are making offers available first. So I think really the approach we should be doing is to facilitate competition at every level between energy sources, between gas for cooking and electricity for cooking, between solar for heating of hot water on your geysers and electricity for hot water geysers, solar, PV, wind, battery storage, gas, coal, nuclear. These should all be competing against each other so that the best and most efficient operations win.
Chris Yelland, thank you so much. Managing Director at EE Business Intelligence.
The Money Show.
The Markets.
Siboniso Ngomalo is the Chief Investment Officer at Old Mutual Investment Group. Siboniso, good evening. Gold and platinum, those shares up again today. Gold and platinum price, both very strong. I mean, at some point, this has got to start to bring in a lot more money for government, for the fiscus.
Yes, certainly so, Stephen. Good evening, and good evening to your listeners. And I mean, the stock market every now and then does some surprising things. So what I'm going to do, Stephen, is I'm going to read the share returns of the gold and platinum shares on the stock exchange, the larger ones, and just look at these numbers. So let's start with Gold Fields. It's returned year to date 162%. Then you go to Sibanye, which is both platinum and gold. Its return, it's up 153% this year, the 9 months of this year. Then Northern Platinum is 151%, Anglo Gold 145%, and Impala is 118%, and Valterra is about 106%. These numbers are very rare, and every now and then they surprise you. But what's happened here, Stephen? Basically, from a gold perspective, and then we'll go into platinum. From a gold perspective, the world is worried. Because the world has got two things that are probably driving gold. One, geopolitical risk. I think there are wars going on in the world, which nuclear powers are involved in. And also we've got less trust, I suppose, in what's called fiat money or the traditional money, because developed market governments have got a lot of debt. The US got a lot of debt. Europe's got a lot of debt. And so people are saying, hey, we've got less faith here. We want to go back to the old school way of looking at the value of money. Then when you look at platinum, what's driving that? Actually there, it's about, well, everybody presumed that the world was going to move forward and actually go into, because most of the platinum group metals go into autocatalytic converters, which is what cleans your car. And so therefore, if you use EVs, electric vehicles, then actually you don't need platinum. But it turns out that no, EVs are unprofitable for the automakers. And so therefore, the platinum companies haven't invested in new supply. Demand, economics 101 from first year university, still exists and will exist for a while. Therefore, prices have gone up. And so this concoction of gold going up and platinum going up is going to be great for the South African fiscus, because we have 80% of the world's PGM metals, and we have a 9th largest gold producer. So if these prices stay here, the corporate taxes are going to go up quite materially in South Africa. That's good for the government, good for employment.
And very quickly, Siboniso, if you can, I mean, if you put all of this into actual share prices and you look at the JSE, everyone's talking about investing in the US at the moment. I mean, which makes more sense?
Yeah. Well, at this moment, if we look at just year to date, the US has returned 5% this year, over the 9 months of this year. South Africa, if you'd invested in South Africa in the market, you've gotten 30%. And so therefore, actually, it's been extremely profitable to be invested in South Africa so far this year.
Siboniso Ngomalo, thanks very much indeed. Chief Investment Officer at the Old Mutual Investment Group.
WhatsApp Stephen
On 072
702
1702.
Well, conversations tonight, of course, about electricity pricing and about the extraordinary story. I mean, run out of words for it, at Tembisa Hospital.
Stephen, great show as it just started. Just with regards to the interview with Mark Hayward, it does sound like this is a potential, or AI can be a potential solution here, where you can get the prices compared between all the various state hospitals for the various products that they order. They have an item number that they will order against. So this does seem like we can get some transparency with an AI-driven solution to compare the various products that are procured from the various hospitals and to kind of rank them up against each other. I don't foresee that being something that we need to get a whole new leadership in place for. We just need to get a system in place for it. And currently we keep talking about AI and its potential roles. This is a huge one. Cheers, Jethro. Bye.
Afternoon, Stephen. You're speaking to Peter from Centurion. I just want to ask, maybe one of your viewers will be able to assist. Where I live, they have stopped us buying electricity through our banking apps and so forth, because they have created their own app. Now, when you use their own app, you must load money into this new app of theirs, which then charge you an extra 3.5% just for one transaction. So if you're buying 1,000 rand electricity, it means that something like 35 rand goes to this app that they have created because we live in a block of flats. I just want to find out if that is within the laws, within NESA, maybe. Let me get the contact details for NESA, or who do I complain to? Because these charges are starting on the 1st of October, forcing everyone to use only the app. You can no longer buy electricity from the garage or from your app or from any other reseller. You can only buy from their app, which is another surcharge of 3.5%. Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I've not come across that. I've come across many stories around electricity and apps and paying for it. If you could shed a little bit more light on that, please. And also, why only in one area? I mean, who's controlling electricity unless there's a sort of private landlord involved? If you know more on that, please, I'd really appreciate that, dare I say, illumination. 011-883-0702 and 021-446-0567. DC getting in touch on 072-702-1702, saying all of this really shows a complete failure by the National Treasury Central Supplier Procurement Unit. It was meant to benchmark and provide acceptable pricing for goods and services. Obviously, talking about Tembisa Hospital. Going on, that suppliers can still overcharge 30 years after democracy tells all of enablement at the highest levels, doesn't it just? There is so much to this story.
702 with Stephen Grootes.
Email him on stephen@702.co.za.
Well, the politicians at the moment from the ANC, the Patriotic Alliance, the Democratic Alliance are all screaming and shouting about what's best for Joburg, but there's signs now that business is getting more and more interested in playing some role in Joburg, or at the very least they will, refer or accept a request to sort of help out the situation in Joburg. I'm not going to describe the situation in Joburg to you. If you've listened to the Money Show for 30 seconds, you've probably heard me talk about it. Martin Kingston is the chair at Business for South Africa. Martin, good evening. Thanks for the time. I don't know who you've been talking to, but at this stage, what kind of role would you as Business for South Africa be prepared to play in helping Joburg?
Well, good evening, Stephen, to you and your listeners. I think the work that we as Business for South Africa have done in partnership with government, particularly focusing on energy, transport and logistics and crime and corruption, as well as more recently unemployment, has borne real and tangible fruits. And at our last meeting with the President, which was about a month ago, the subject of Johannesburg, of course, came up. You are very well aware, as your listeners, of the many challenges that beset us in Johannesburg, and we feel that it undermines the credibility of the prospects of the country if we can't ensure that Johannesburg is firing on all cylinders, and clearly that's not the case at the moment. And what we've agreed to do, both within business and with the government, is to assess what scope there is to build on existing initiatives. And it's not that business isn't already involved. Business is involved in a number of initiatives, whether it's Josie My Josie, whether it is the work that Discovery has done with respect to potholes, whether it is working on individual, private, public partnerships, let alone the work that the public sector is doing, including, of course, the Presidential Commission or Committee on and Task Force on Johannesburg. But it seems to us that there needs to be some real assessment that is done as to where it is that we can lean in a much more significant way, bring the skills and capabilities that we've mobilized in the partnership so far. About 750 subject matter experts have been involved in both energy, transport and logistics, as well as crime and corruption. And I think that we are seeing that bearing real and tangible fruits with respect to Johannesburg as well. What we've also said, though, Stephen, is we believe that the political challenges, and we're very mindful of them, are to be dealt with by the political parties, not by business. We're not going to get involved in that at all. And that has obviously been a gridlock to date.
So, I mean, I think in principle, everyone should welcome business preparing to get involved or to get more involved in the situation in Joburg. I absolutely appreciate and would expect you to say what you've said about politics. The risk, of course, is that Joburg is in this position, I suppose, to a large extent because of politicians. Business comes in and helps it out. would the politicians be expected, or the people leading Joburg, let me put it like that rather, be expected to live up to any kind of bargain at all? There's no point business fixing everything and the politicians doing nothing.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, of course, our experience in the partnership has been that there needs to be joint acceptance of accountability and responsibility, that there needs to be transparency about the work that needs to be performed. There needs to be a clear hierarchy of priorities and what interventions are required by whom. And if that doesn't work, then we can't make progress. It's exactly that we saw happening with the National Energy Crisis Committee, and I think we can all agree there's been real and tangible progress in energy. The same thing with the National Logistics Crisis Committee, and most recently with the Joint Initiative on Crime and Corruption. We can't hold the politicians to account. I mean, society, of course, can and should. But we've made it clear in our engagements with government, and the President, I believe, accepts and acknowledges this, that ultimately the politicians need to be held to account by the parties to which they are accountable and responsible. And we're all equally, by the way, Stephen, aware of the fact that the local government elections are forthcoming. We're not going to be used as a pawn in that process. We do think that if we bring the heft and the expertise of business to bear in a coordinated way with clear interventions in critical areas, that it can make a difference. But as you say, it can only make a difference if there's joint accountability. If indeed we find that we get gridlocked as a consequence of political inertia or maladministration or crime and corruption, then we will withdraw our offer of support. We can't obviously operate in such circumstances.
Is it a sort of practical support? I mean, are you offering to do more than business already does and businesses already do in fixing potholes? Would it be some kind of help in fixing water pipes? I don't know what that would be. Some of it might be a little bit more intricate than that, and actually managing revenue systems for example, the water services. I mean, that could make a big difference in some ways.
So I think it is all of the above. The fact of the matter is that some of those initiatives are going ahead already, as I said, fixing potholes or some private-public partnerships at a small scale, or indeed, Josie, my Josie, the work that's being done around 44 Main Street. What we're talking about here is having a very disciplined approach to much more fundamental constraints, particularly, of course, around service delivery, particularly with respect to water or other forms of infrastructural support. And there we have both expertise as well as the ability to mobilize capital. There's no doubt, if we look at the national stage, that structural reform is not something that's being talked about. It is something that is now being implemented in a very clear and manifest way, where the private sector can play a very significant role, both in the mobilization of capital, the construction and operation and maintenance of assets within appropriate guardrails and guidelines. There is absolutely no reason why the same shouldn't apply in Johannesburg, but everybody's got to be prepared to have transparent rules, responsibilities, and, as I said, accountability. And unless we've taken stock, and that's what we've agreed we're going to do over the next month, of the work that's already being done, both by the public sector at national, as I said, the presidential task team at provincial and at municipal level, as well as the work that's being done by the private sector already, we're not in a position to assess whether or not, and if so, how we can best lend our assistance to what is a critical, issue. If it is, after all, the economic hub of the country, for all the progress we make elsewhere, this is a terrible cloud, that actually is on the horizon, unless and until such time as we demonstrate that Johannesburg can achieve its potential, which it's manifestly not doing at the moment.
Martin Kingston, thanks so much. Chair at Business for South Africa. Well, I don't know how you feel about that. I mean, I personally welcome business getting involved. I think everyone who can help should. The question does become, does that mean that you end up helping the politicians out when they don't deserve it?
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa Corporate and Investment Banking, proud sponsor of South African Auto Week 2025.
Well, I don't know if you've done any planning for next year yet, financially speaking, of course, but I'm sure when you get to it, one of the first things you'll have to look at is your medical aid costs. And you won't be surprised to see that once again, medical aid inflation is above normal inflation. In fact, some forecasts suggest while inflation will be a low 3.5%, medical aid inflation could be, in some cases, as high as 10%. Verona Pillay is the lead technical advisor at Financial Services. Verona, good evening. I mean, this is a consistent issue. Why is medical aid inflation always so much higher than normal inflation?
Good evening, Stephen, and good evening to all the 702 landers. Thank you for having me on the show. So yes, you're quite right. In fact, medical scheme increases specifically around this time of the year is giving everybody anxiety because it's the time when all the schemes launch their new benefits for the year. But you speak about medical price inflation, and this is quite high in comparison to normal inflation. And the reason, there's a number of factors that could be considered. And I'll get into that in a short while. So you spoke about CPI being, in August it was 3.3%. And in fact, medical price inflation is sometimes 2 to 3% more than that. So ideally, if we're looking at it, it should be about 6.3%. And as you mentioned, now it's going to go, into 10%. In fact, we've seen schemes launch. This fourth one has launched today. And of the four, there's about, between a 7% and some plans have an 11% increase. And so it goes to reason, why is it so expensive? Why is it higher than, your normal CPI? And there's a number of contributing factors, and I'll tell you just a few. So the first one I would like to mention is medicines and chronic conditions. So, as we get older, we're more prone to diseases and chronic conditions. And so it's the diagnosis, the treatment thereof, and of course the monitoring of it. But the expensive part comes in when we have to get that chronic medication. And in South Africa, there's something that's called the single exit price for medication. And this is the regulated pricing for dispensing, or rather for the, supplying medication. So when you go to the pharmacy, you get your single exit price. This is the cost of medication. But then which pharmacy you go to depends on how much they're going to add for dispensing fees. And that just hikes up the premiums, the costs more and more and more. Okay. So that's one factor.
Can I ask, when the scheme price goes up, so the medical aid inflation goes up, is the amount they're paying out going up as much?
Yes.
Okay.
So it depends. If you look at, for example, the single exit price, that's actually 2% more than inflation. So yes, they are actually paying out that amount as well.
Okay, so this is really a question about the inflation in the medical sector. Now, I understand some of the technicalities as you describe them, but over time, some medicines, like I imagine the first aspirin for headaches, was probably quite expensive, but would have come down over time. It's always the new stuff that's the most expensive, right?
Correct. And I think it's, we often as advisors speak about generic medication and the brand names or the original medication. And obviously there's a price difference between the both. And once the patent is obviously, reconfigured, and the generic medications are much more cheaper in comparison to the brand name. So it depends on what medication you're actually purchasing, and that will drive up the cost.
Let me be controversial for a moment, Verona. Are some of us consuming medicines that maybe we didn't consume and sort of didn't, in inverted commas, need 10 years ago? I'm thinking, for example, so a statin, which brings down your cholesterol, the price has come down. It's very, very cheap compared to where it would have been 20 years ago. And if you look at the number of lives it's saved, it's unbelievable. We're seeing now weight loss medications. So what would have been used only by people living with diabetes 20 years ago is now becoming standard, very expensive. But all of those things would be included in these overall costs.
I think there's risk mechanisms put into place for medical schemes. So there's certain things that they would cover and certain things they wouldn't. And that would obviously be, in an effort to contain costs, quite rightly, about what we're discussing. But there's the strain of chronic conditions, the strain of illnesses. We've seen post-COVID how the impact of illness has affected hospital admissions and chronic conditions, and thus, overall, altogether, so you can't really look at it in isolation, but altogether, from an illness perspective, that's driving up costs. In fact, the statistics have shown now that hospital admissions are more prevalent for the ages of between 40 and 60. That's where we're seeing the peaks. And people over the age of 60 are increasing the hospital admissions even more, and the specialist visits. So all of that combined factors have a role to play in the increase of medical scheme contributions.
Okay, so we've got more need, more cost, more usage. This is just going to keep medical aid inflation at the sort of levels we're talking about. Let's call it 2 percentage points above inflation. Forever. The sky is literally the limit here.
And that's true. We actually have anxiety thinking about it.
Yeah.
But the reality is That's the whole reason for a national health insurance. But also, we've been speaking about this for years. So we've been encouraging clients to be on proper medical aids, that are suitable for their needs. We find that people throughout their lifetimes, whether their financial needs change, their ages change, they still maintain the same plan. So we as advisors are encouraging people to, seek advice from an independent advisor to make sure that you're on the correct options. But not only that, there's other ways of dealing with it as well. And so we consult about 7.5 thousand corporate clients, 7,500 corporate clients, and 2.4 million lives. And over our years of experience in the industry, we know that the typical approach to healthcare does not work. So we've changed it. We've challenged the status quo, and we've come up with hybrid solutions. So perhaps consider having a medical aid just for the core benefits of hospitalization, chronic utilization, and then have bolt-on products that we've looked in the market. We've had a combination of insurance products, of gap cover products, a whole lot of different products that we can put together that can actually provide the benefits of a fully comprehensive medical aid at a third of the cost.
Verona Pillay, thank you. We'll have to leave it there, I'm afraid. Lead Technical Advisor at Financial Services. Well, we will speak to Bongani Dallas from the Construction Industry Development Board in the next little while. We'll talk about the construction mafia. We will talk about techno-feudalism, what killed capitalism. It's a book, in case you're wondering. And really looking forward to speaking to Claire Johnson half an hour from now. You're with The Money Show. Good evening, 7 o'clock.
And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa Corporate and Investment Banking, proud sponsor of South African Auto Week 2025. Good evening. I'm Stephen Grootes. Dropping my water on the ground was the noise that you heard there. But like the city of Joburg, the jokes do sort of write themselves sometimes. Plenty to come in the next little while. We'll talk about the Construction Industry Development Board. We'll speak to their CEO in just a moment, trying to crack down on the construction mafia, how you do that. We've heard so many conversations around that. Dr. Lumkile Mondi, he, of course, is a senior lecturer at Wits. He'll review Yanis Varoufakis's book, Techno-Feudalism, What Killed Capitalism. Looking forward to that conversation. I think that's going to be important. And then How I Make My Money. Claire Johnson, the lead singer for Mango Groove, really is the soundtrack actually to a generation, if you think about it. So much that they were responsible for, that they've been involved in. And I'll tell you one or two personal stories while we have that conversation. Just the way in which I think that music from Mango Groove has played such a big part in the life of Mzansi, going back a very long time now. But so many of the tunes are kind of iconic. You hear them, you hear a few notes of them, you remember where you were when you first heard them. It's that kind of music. It's that powerful. You know, the number as well, 011 883 0702 021 446 0567 and 072 702 1702.
WhatsApp Stephen
on 072
702
1702.
Voice notes coming in tonight. We've been talking about the situation in Joburg, talking about Tembisa Hospital, talking about medical aid as well.
Hi, Steve. I'm quite shocked that we have South Africans who are shocked by what has just happened at Tembisa Hospital. I remember we're living in a country where people are able to, a group of friends are able to loot money that is meant to shelter the poorest, money that is meant to give at least meal to the poorest. So no wonder we have so many millionaires these days. It's so easy to become a millionaire in South Africa. You just find anywhere there's money and then you start looting. Invite your friends and start looting.
Hi, Stephen. Good evening, sir. Look, man, I think this partnership is long overdue. You know, Johannesburg is too big to be allowed to fail or to experiment, as it were. Quite clear, you know, politicians on their own and can never, I repeat, manage and run a city as complex as Johannesburg successfully without the private public partnership, you know, that involves big business. And so it's good that the business of South Africa is coming on board, and I hope the politicians will not frustrate the process. And also, Kiki, lovely show.
I think business must be a little bit circumspect in bailing out and propping up cities like Johannesburg, because then these politicians take all the credit for it, and the undiscerning voter will vote them in again because they think the municipalities did the job. Meanwhile, it's business and private individuals. Whereas actually we need to be voting these people out and putting competent city managers into all of our municipalities. It's pointless if we keep bailing out these municipalities because there's no incentive for people to change. I don't know, it's a tricky one because we still need safe homes and safe roads, but at the same time, we need to get competent people running things.
Isn't that really the question in this? How do you get involved? What do? You don't want to protect politicians that have failed. You don't want to protect people, but it's not actually, you are maybe protecting them, but it's really the people who suffer without your intervention. I think it is very difficult and complex. I think we're also at a point where people are kind of almost working past politicians now. You don't wait for government to do something. You sort of do it yourself. Now, that's great, but not for communities that can't help themselves, and there's so many of them. So it leads to all sorts of issues. It creates more inequality. There's a lot to consider with all of this. We should actually maybe look at a sort of feature or something about when business gets involved and have a deeper conversation about it. We'll try and make some time, I think, to do that. But it is very difficult. I do accept that. On the other hand, I think business does need to get involved. I think you could easily argue, and I would, that there's a moral duty that if you can do something in this situation, well, then you should.
The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM, streaming on the Prime Media Plus app
and DSTV channel 856.
We hear about the construction mafia all the time, and one of the problems with Joburg is there's so little construction at the moment. But the Construction Industry Development Board says it's going through the process of blacklisting firms in the industry that are involved in any kind of wrongdoing. Bongani Dladla is the CEO of the Construction Industry Development Board. Bongani, good evening. How does this blacklisting process work?
Hi, Stephen, and to all the listeners. Really, it's more of deregistering the companies and taking away their license to do business with government, because the construction industry is regulated and also the CIDB manages that process of issuing licenses and grading companies based on their capability to undertake projects, especially when it comes to public sector projects.
Does someone, how does it work? Does someone have to apply for a company to be deregistered? Does someone come to you and say, this is what happened? Is there a police report?
What we did, we established an investigations unit and also supplemented that with forensic experts from outside the CIDP, where if we are seeing stalled projects or projects that are failing or there are transgressions that are reported to us via our hotlines, then we investigate to check the legitimacy of that company, the legitimacy of its track record that it submitted to the CIDP when it applied for its grading or it was upgrading its status.
Okay, so you actually start the process in most cases. You don't wait for someone to complain. You go and look.
It's a combination of both. Sometimes during a tender process, Stephen sees someone that is not supposed to be a grade 9 and say there is no way that individual is supposed to be a grade 9. So they would report that through our hotline. Or when we undertake audits as a CIDP of the companies in our register, we notice something that is funny, maybe a project that does not exist in our record. Or in another case where there is a case that is reported in the news where you are seeing a project, they're saying some money was spent and this contractor was building, but there is no project. Then we also pick that up to investigate. So every day we get stories about projects that are being stalled, contracts that have been awarded illegitimately, and sometimes it also referrals from the Auditor General themselves when they go and audit and then they say these projects are problematic.
I presume a company can object. You have to notify them that you're about to deregister them?
Oh, definitely, yeah. We go through the PAJA process, and also some companies have taken us to court to saying, for instance, one case that we were dealing with recently, you are deregistering me for offenses that I did 10 years ago. Now my grade is valid. That's not really relevant. It's fruit of a poisonous tree. So what you do is you look at the company in entire existence as to whether they got their grading or they've performed according to the terms of the contract and our code of conduct.
I realize government is a big customer, probably the biggest customer.
Yes,
definitely. Does it actually have an impact on these companies?
Well, it does, because if you think of a company that is a grade 9 in the CIDP, that is someone that can be doing a project of 2 billion rand. And then if that project is not completed, or 2 billion and more sometimes, if that project is not completed, it costs the state a lot of money to bring in another contractor on board, or delays due to just someone who was not meant to be able to do those types of projects, or they do not have the experience or the financial capital to do those kinds of projects. And when you look at the extent of some of these project failures that we see, it's really costing the state and the taxpayer a lot of money. Hence, it's quite an important action to take in order to ensure that those that are capable of delivering on these infrastructure ambitions that government has are capable to do so.
So Bongani, I appreciate what you're doing. I think it's very important. But this is now a more complex question. When a company gets deregistered, are you able to keep track of the individuals in the company? So say Stephen starts company A, they get deregistered, Stephen now just goes and starts company B. I mean, I imagine that's a much harder thing.
That's a complex issue that we are trying to deal with. Because, immediately, Stephen, look at it this way. If someone was a grade 9 and then they're deregistered, when they come back to us, they'll have to start at grade 1. And we can monitor how they grow within the grades. Because grade 1s, they do projects up to 1 million. But there is a bigger question of whether that director is deemed to be delinquent or fit to be a director of a company. So that's what we are studying currently, and also seeing what regulations on our side we need to put in place to ensure that we can deal with both the company and the individual. But you are correct, that's a far more complex one, because currently we are dealing with companies. We have a register of companies in the construction industry, and then if someone, for instance, is a registered engineer, you can take that case to the engineering council. But some people are just purely directors or shareholders, and they don't have professional counsels that you can work with in order to deal with the individuals. But it's something that we are studying very hard, and even other entities in the space are also looking into that as to what regulation amendments we can put in place in order to ensure that the industry is those that are getting projects in the industry are good actors.
Okay. Do you think that's working? I mean, it's obviously stopping certain companies, but do you think it's having an overall impact on the sort of construction mafia? I mean, that's much harder to assess.
Well, it has impacts, because one thing, if you want to change the system, Stephen, you would know very well that you need to change the culture. We need to create a deterrent towards people thinking they can parachute themselves from grade 1 to grade 9 with no competency, because it has real-world impact. And the reason why we are also this round publicizing the fact that we are deregistering companies is that to make sure that we create an awareness that this has consequences, and these consequences are quite severe for the businesses, as opposed to people thinking, it's a harmless crime and those kinds of things. So it is changing the perception, and it's also creating space for people to take pride in the work that they've done when they come and register with us in the correct grades, not skip grades unnecessarily so.
Bongani Dladla, thanks very much indeed. CEO at the Construction Industry Development Board.
702. Stephen is on X.
At Stephen Grootes.
Well, voice notes coming through. We've been talking about electricity at Mbisa Hospital, the situation in Joburg. Lots to talk about tonight.
Hi, Stephen. Yeah, listening to Verona, you'll think that the world is a perfect place. Remove the element of corporate greed, supplier extortion, and wastage. You'll begin to understand why medical aid contributions increase at the rate that it is. Faisal, yeah.
Yeah, Faisal, absolutely. I mean, I've got another message on this from someone who puts it really quite nicely. They don't give their name. They just, they do, in fact. Dion says, Stephen, amen. It's the first time I'm hearing a person that gets it. We were talking to Verona Pillay earlier. Healthcare costs are going to be the death of us if we don't get national healthcare off the ground. Forgive the pun. Okay, yes, I hear you. I think you're talking about the NHI. Well, Dion, I don't know. I mean, NHI, I am not sure, frankly, that it is going to happen. That's just my sense of things at the moment. You might have a more informed sense. 21 minutes after 7.
The Money Show.
Business Books.
Well, one of the most important dynamics of our time, it's literally defining the way that you live, is about how big international tech companies are controlling what you see, what you read, what you buy. And they're doing that more and more. I have a friend who always wears the same T-shirt whenever I see her. It just says, fight the algorithm, go somewhere else, basically. And the algorithm kind of controls what you know. One of the most important and interesting critiques of this development has been the book Techno-Feudalism, What Killed Capitalism. It's by Yanis Varoufakis. You may remember he played a big role in Greek politics. He was the finance minister. He is from the left. Don't be surprised. And this was in Greece some time ago. Well, Dr. Lumkile Mondi is a senior lecturer at the School of Economics and Business Science at Wits University. Lumkile, good evening. I remember Varoufakis a little bit. He's strongly critical of some aspects of capitalism. I presume from the title of his book, he's not a big fan of techno-feudalism either.
Good evening, Stephen, and to your listeners. Absolutely. Remember, he's Greek, and it's embedded. Socialism or socialist ideals are embedded in the community, and the critique of globalization is part. Remember when they were forced by IMF to restructure their economy, there was a lot of resistance among the Greek people because I think in the culture, family-orientated, but more important also, a lot of solidarity with the rest of humanity in that society. So in this book, Techno-Feudalism, What Killed Capitalism by Yanis Varoufakis, he provides a framework that asserts that cloud capital enables the extraction of surplus value, not only from wage labor, but from non-wage labor serfs who unwittingly reproduce the cloud capital through their digital activities. So basically, it's a critique of the transition from capitalism, which had moved from commodities, where everything was priced and commodified, and moved towards financialization, where we moved from producing products into producing financial assets. And now we've moved towards the cloud, dominated by 7 important companies, Stephen, that you talk about from time to time. These are Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, Broadcom, Meta Platforms, Microsoft, and NVIDIA. Those are companies which are larger than many countries' combined GDP.
So what that means then is that there's a kind of enforced nature to this relationship. That once you're in that ecosystem, once you're on the cloud, you can't actually get out of it. And is that like a serf in the kind of medieval Europe? You could not get out of it. That was the issue.
Absolutely. Once you are in it, you are part of it and exploited. So it's very interesting, Stephen, because if you look into really the decolonialization school, people like Jen Ndlovu, Mignolo, who look at this cloud colonialism, as they call it, that it is a new form of power with interrelated events, including political, economic, social, and epistemic technological domains, where coloniality of knowledge controls African subjectivity and knowledge through repression of African modes of knowing, replacement with Eurocentric epistemologies. So this is meant to capture the youth digitally, as you all know, and other forms whereby we all caught up with our own gadget, with the information that we have, and we forget about human relation, we forget about the politics and solidarity. That is very, very important because we are social animals as humanity. We're not tied to gadget and the cloud. We're tied to our politics, the social interaction that we have, to the music that we produce, and the art that we enjoy. And these cloud colonialists, basically, they want us to move to a different form well captured, controlled, and we forget about all our own knowledge, but we are all bound by their own knowledge, which produces new form of social relation at the expense of us fighting about real issues. In Johannesburg, we talk about water, we talk about roads, we talk about corruption. We forget completely about those because we are so much captured in this new knowledge and this new domain of cloud, whereby we're controlled by these 7 companies and many more own data centers and infrastructure of this new economy.
Very quickly, if you can, Lumkile, I mean, normally when there's a big economic shift, I think to myself, well, this company's dominant now, but they won't be dominant forever. But I wonder if you look at the size of Google, for example, and how many companies it's able to buy up, if maybe this kind of dominance might be entrenched for a very long time.
Well, fortunately, Stephen, there is an engagement that is taking place. I think people like Vukajeni and many other scholars are looking at ways, including us at VETS and other institutions in South Africa, at True Innovation, institutions like Chimoloro and others. There are competitive forces taking place where through the platforms that are here, that these companies produce, we can really use that blockchain technology to create different technologies. And that's going to take a while. I think the opportunity that we're having is that the wars that are taking place and the destruction of the globalism that you all thought will happen is giving us an opportunity to recreate our own and fight back against cloud colonialism, and in that process create our own technologies and bring in our own knowledge systems into that new technology platforms that we're developing. So there's an opportunity. I think it's all not lost, and people like Varoufakis in this book present that view that, it is possible to do that, but it's going to engage quite a lot of pushing back. And fortunately, Trump is providing that. So we need to lean on this disruption by Trump and try and build our own in this process of cloud colonialism. If we don't do so, we're going to be captured. And like in capitalism, we'll all be dependent on the North as the global South.
Dr. Lumkile Mondi, thank you so much. Senior lecturer at the School of Economics and Business Science. The book is called Techno-Feudalism, What Killed Capitalism. It's by Janusz Varoufakis.
The Money Show. How I make my money.
23 minutes to 8 the time. So, I mean, there are some people I genuinely get excited to meet, even when I meet them for the second or third time, partly because I think of their own role in my history. They don't necessarily know anything about it, but just the music, the soundtrack they created to my life. And I was reminded because a couple of weeks ago I was at the R&B Classics, and it was one of those quite cold Joburg nights. You're all sitting down, and suddenly they said, we're now going to play, they're not even there, a montage of Mango Groove songs. And within seconds, everybody is out of their seats. And that's the power of this band. And Claire Johnson is in the studio now. And a couple of moments ago, we said on air, we're going to speak to Claire Johnson. There was a bit of a reaction. And just maybe let's remind you a little bit of what we're talking about.
Hi, Stephen. We hear that you're going to be chatting to Claire shortly. So my hubby and I are just sending a preemptive message to say to her, thank you so much for amazing music. Her concert at Walter Sisulu a couple of weekends ago was just phenomenal. She's great. The band is great. We bought the vinyl, and my husband gave her a big hug, and she said,
thank you. That was a proper hug.
Thank you, Claire.
Very tempting to just let it go on and on and on. Claire, good evening. It's great to see you again. Thank you so much for coming through.
No, the pleasure's all mine, Stephen. Thank you so much for having me.
I mean, the excitement that people have when they hear your name, when they hear the phrase Mango Groove, the idea that you are a soundtrack to something that's greater than just a band. I've often wondered, and this is a strange question, if that's actually quite a heavy responsibility in a way.
It's a lovely thing to hear, is that we were the soundtrack to people's lives during a very, very thrilling time in our country's history. That transition to democracy was remarkable. And so, no, above all, it's lovely. It's a huge compliment. I suppose maybe there's a pressure not to tarnish it. Yeah, it's a very fair question.
You were quite young when all of this happened. I mean, you were performing. I mean, were you 18 yet? Were you allowed to be where you were performing?
I didn't think about that. I mean, I wasn't a drinker back then, but I was underage in clubs. Absolutely. I was 17. I was my last year of school when I joined the band.
I can't imagine what it was like to be in a band like that, as multiracial, as illegal, bluntly, as it was, and then going to Greenside High the next morning and, I don't know, doing a maths test or something.
Why did you have to mention that subject? No, I have to say that last year, that matric year was difficult because I was just wanting to grow up. I just wanted to be a grown up. I used to go and hang out at Wits University a lot of the time when I was supposed to be at school, hang out with some of the guys in the band.
And some of the people in the band were very different generations to you.
Exactly.
I mean, the eldest was, I think, 64, and there you are as 17.
No, spot on. I do look back, and I think that's probably one of the things that has always been special about Mango Groove. It crosses generations as well as hopefully other divides. And it shows you that music really does know no borders and limitations. It's a universal language.
Were you, or maybe the older people sort of realized more that in fact some of what you were doing was a little bit almost dangerous. You know, some of it was illegal. You were in places where you were not supposed to be.
Yes.
Some members of the band could be in one place and some in another place. I mean, we forget the absurdity of it.
The absurdity of it. That's exactly right. Yes, an example, for instance, was John Leyden, our founding member, was arrested in Soweto for contravening the pass laws because he was dropping Jack back in Soweto after 9 o'clock. So he was thrown into the van and then into the cells and was bailed out by his mother the next day, and he was all of 19. And the ludicrousness of all of it is what's so staggering.
I mean, he's 19, you're 17, and people's parents, I mean, it's insane.
It was crazy.
I mean, you laugh about it now.
Yeah.
Did everybody laugh about it then?
No, it was, when I joined in 85, that was when, I think the state of emergency, was that 85 or 86?
I think 85 it started.
I think it was 85, and that's when the government really started to try, and it was that last gasp, I suppose. And so it was towards the end of all of it. And of course, by 1989, 90, when our very first album finally came out, it was a very different South Africa. It was very much ready for change. But no, back in the day, in the mid-80s, we apparently were watched by security police and things like that. So, but when you're young, you're bulletproof. You really are bulletproof.
I mean, I miss it.
Oh, so do I. So do I.
I have a memory of you. I am a little younger than you.
Yes.
But I have a memory of you. I was still at school. I would have been in standard 9, grade 11. And you were performing in Joburg at a big concert that then linked up to a concert in the UK.
Yes.
And was it the lead singer of Queen?
It was a Freddie Mercury
tribute concert.
It linked up to London and San Francisco.
Yes.
Exactly.
It was tremendously exciting because you'd never been part of anything international
No,
before.
we were pariahs. So anything that linked us to anything abroad was hugely exciting. This is long before, the Springboks travel the world now and everyone comes here. And this was long before any of that. And people forget how it was.
You'd been with the band for about 7 or 8 years by then, but did you have a moment to consider how far you'd come from kind of, 17 in a nightclub illegally to now on the stage, sharing a stage, being asked to actually be the South African contribution? And there was, I don't mean disrespect to others, but there really was no one else. It was always going to be you who would be asked to be a part of something like that. South Africa was kind of very interesting to the outside world suddenly.
Very, very much.
That must have been amazing.
It was amazing. And I actually, it's such a great question because I regret not taking stock and thinking, wow, look how far we've come. If anything, you start doing amazing, sort of incredible things you didn't imagine were possible, and you get, I'm not going to say greedy. Greedy is too harsh a word, but you start anticipating the next big thing. Well, now we're going to go and do this, and now we're going to go and do that. And we were being managed by Jim Beach, who was Queen's manager for a while. And so you really do think, you're on for a great international journey. And then, but realistically, it was too soon for us internationally.
The business of it all.
Yes, the business of it.
And I mean, the world has changed the business of it all because, you in the sort of time that you've been performing has gone from LPs to tapes to CDs to streaming. Yep. And the maths has changed completely and not in favor of you.
No, you're so right. The nice thing about now is people can make their own recordings in their bedrooms and they can put it out to the world. Back in the day, you would have to get a record company to sign you, and, it was a whole big thing. A contract would be signed, proper, sort of business stuff. Whereas now, you can do your own thing and put it out there, but good luck. There's something like 100,000 songs get released every single day.
Yeah.
How do you manage to stick your head above the parapet? How do you get noticed? And of course, it comes down to social media. But even then, how do you get noticed? It's chaos. And as for even the songs that become hits, so-called hits, 500,000 streams, I think they get you something like $30 or something like that. So what's happened with artists now, and interestingly, it's a lot of the older artists who are touring. You have got to tour to make money. So, and you've got to sell merchandise. That's how you're going to make your bread and butter now. You can't rely on album sales at all.
I mean, the difference is massive because, you have this public image of an artist. Oh, they're in the international stage. They're, doing a Freddie Mercury tribute concert.
Oh, absolutely.
And actually there's something, you still have to buy petrol or whatever it is.
You do have to buy petrol, and correct. And you have, your bills every month are exactly the same every month. What you're bringing in every month. And, you'll have 3 months where you earn nothing. And then you'll have a month where you earn very well. And sometimes it's very difficult to plan for that. I mean, for instance, you'll have a global event like the pandemic, like COVID, where, for 18 months you don't work. And what do? You cash in your savings, you cash in policies. So, you've got to try and be sensible about all of these things, but it's difficult. It's difficult to balance these things. So I think the trick is to diversify, is to do other things as well. Come up. I mean, for instance, Arno Carstens is a brilliant, fine artist.
Yeah.
And I think he's making good money off that. So things that you're passionate about in other directions and using your profile, I think is important.
You had a mother who took you, I think, famously to an audition for the play Annie.
Yes, yes, she did.
Would you do the same thing now for a daughter?
If I had a daughter. Do you know, I was so insistent when I was 10. I was adamant, and my mother was so reluctant. Claire, there are these professional little girls. They can all tap dance. They can all, Mommy, I really want to go. So I went and I got in after lots of auditioning. Would I do it for my 10-year-old daughter? I'd want to go with the fantasy, and I'd want to go with allowing her to follow her dream. Absolutely. But I would be very wary. I would be very wary. That's not me undoing my life, by the way, or my history. Of course. Yeah. But it's tough. It's bruising. You've got to have a thick skin, and it's almost against the grain. And an artist has to have a bit of a thin skin as well. You see, so it's a tough business. It is a business. You see, yeah.
I would imagine part of it is also so people will say, "Oh, my child is talented," and I always sort of smile. Well, you should see mine.
Absolutely.
But there's also a whole lot of other things. I mean, you need grit to survive as long as you have.
Grit. Yeah.
You need also to be in the right ecosystem, which maybe for a long time Mango Groove was a big part of for all of you.
Absolutely. Right ecosystem, timing.
Yeah.
Timing. Who who you meet along the way. If everything lines up, then you can fly. But if one of those things doesn't, line up properly, I don't know. It really, can get just pretty hopeless.
So one of the funny things about it is whenever I think about people producing music, now I produce radio on a sort of daily basis, and it is the most fun thing there is. I'm not at all musical, and I'm happy to prove it to you if you need me to afterwards. But you will see images, you'll see films. There's a great thing on Netflix right now about the greatest night in pop. I don't know if you've seen it, about the making of We Are the World, right?
Oh, yes,
Michael Jackson and all the rest. And it's amazing to watch.
Incredible.
Everyone looks tired. Good. They should. They've been at a big event and then they're at something else. They're doing
Yeah, exactly.
But they all are also still professional and they're aware they're being filmed, right? So there are a couple of moments.
Yeah.
Whenever you see videos where people have used recording studios, the video, they all look like they're having the world's best time. Is it really like that?
No, it's hard work. There's so much detail that goes into it. But I think back to when we first started recording on the 2-inch tapes, those huge tapes.
Yes.
Whereas now it's all digital and it's a lot easier. It's a lot quicker. But there's still so much detail that goes into it. And, something like vocals, and that's obviously my area, that can be very, very tiring because you really want to get it right. And it's such a human, singing, it comes through your body and out of your mouth, and sometimes it sounds lovely and other times it doesn't. And, you do take after take after take to get the right energy, to get the right notes, to get everything right. And it can be very, very draining and frustrating. If you're having a bad day, sometimes you should just come back the next day. So no, it is intense. It is intense, particularly if it's live. We 11 of us, it's a lot of live musicians, and that's hard work.
Can you tell afterwards which take they used?
Well, interestingly, now they can actually cobble things together.
Yes, of course.
So they'll say, how you finished that chorus was absolutely beautiful, but we'll take, your 20th take.
Wow.
We'll take the first chunk and then we'll chuck in take 19's third bit. And they can do that because they just drag these things around on the screen. So it makes life a lot easier. And that's why for me, the real excitement is live performance, because that's real. That's when you're doing what you really believe in.
We're speaking to Claire Johnston tonight, the lead singer of Mango Groove, how she's made her money. It's 9 minutes to 8.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa Corporate and Investment Banking, proud sponsor of South African Auto Week 2025.
The Money Show, how I make my money.
Claire Johnson, the lead singer of Mango Groove, in our studio, explaining her career to you, and in fact responses coming through already on 072 702 1702.
Good evening, Stephen. Claire Johnson is amazing. My little Zoe, they had to move to Ireland to get their better life. And one of the things she had to do was learn how to speak Irish and how to play a pan flute. And she was very anti this pan flute, my little 9-year-old. And I said to my daughter, show her the video of Claire Johnson's famous song with the pan flutes. And she will pan flute, they call it, to something else in Ireland. And she will take more interest. And sure enough, she takes more interest in it now. Thank you, Claire. Oh, my daughter's also Claire. Thank you so much.
That's gorgeous.
That's amazing.
Thank you so much.
There's a power to music that other things don't have. I mean, I like to think the spoken word has power, but music, is far bigger than that.
Yes, it is that universal language, and sport. I mean, I think we're seeing that with the Springboks, how they're bringing the country together. Yes, music and sport for sure, because they're just accessible, and I think it is that universal language thing that music has. You don't need to understand the language to kind of get the feeling from the song.
I sometimes use this phrase, and I wish it were mine, and I don't know where I got it from, but I did get it from somewhere else, from someone else.
Okay.
Mango Groove reminds me of it a lot, that South Africa is a country that wants to party together. We just get irritated with the DJ.
That is fantastic. I'm stealing that too.
Yeah. I don't know where I got it from.
Well, I like it a lot. That's great.
But I think Mango Groove, in a way, epitomizes that, because you come from such different parts of our society.
Yes.
Yes. And I often wonder what that must have been like, because in many ways we were further apart then. I mean, in many ways we're very far apart now.
Yeah.
But was it ever kind of difficult, to sort of have these conversations? Or was there a sense of we're working towards something and it's the music that matters?
It was a lot of that, seeing the effect that music had on people. It was quite profound, and it sort of, and unifying, really.
Did you know when it was going to take off? I mean, was there a concert or a something?
You know what? We had the launch of that album that finally got released after lots of false starts, and that was in '89. And the next day, every radio station was playing the music. I mean, every radio station. Now, there weren't a lot back then, but they were all playing.
All three of them, yes.
But they were all playing it. And then we thought, wow, this is interesting. And then, the first single was Dance Some More, I think.
Yeah.
And that just went gold almost immediately. And we were just shocked. We honestly thought some friends and family would get behind the thing after the 5 years of, snort and trana. And, we were blown away.
I think one of the reasons that it took off was because it was a time of hope. And people,
very much.
People listen to you, they're reminded of that.
Yes.
Along
agreed.
with everything else. Are you a bit disappointed? I think a lot of people are very disappointed if you drive through Joburg or whatever. There's a sense of this is actually quite a tough time.
I am a bit disappointed. I love Joburg. I was born in England, but I've lived in Johannesburg all my life. I'm a passionate Joburger. And it's still beautiful, but it needs a lot of TLC. And I live in an area where there are lots and lots of potholes. And it's just... it seems to me so easy. You know, if there's the will, it's something you just sort out. You know, it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
But I remain an optimist. I really, really do. And I do think that, you know, my everyday life, you know, dealing with all of us South Africans makes me very optimistic. It really does. You know, so that's what I love.
You made the point earlier that to make money now, you have to perform.
Yes.
And you've been performing as a band for a long time. You've had a couple of solo albums along the way.
Yes.
Do you still get the same buzz? Do you still get the same...
Yeah, we do. Absolutely. 2 weeks ago at Walter Sisulu, the one message mentioned that I was, very butterfly-filled before going on stage. And I think once you're out there, once you've sung your first song and made proper eye contact with the audience, made friends with the audience, then you settle in and you go, I think it's going to be okay.
And when you come off stage, how do you feel then?
Energized, potentially drained as well. Mostly energized, actually. Mostly just wanting to sort of talk. You want to talk about it. So what did you think about this? And what did you think about that? And then later on, you sort of crash a little bit. And there's often after that a sense of anticlimax.
Oh, yes. I can understand why, though, because it's such a big thing.
Yeah.
You've got to come down eventually.
Exactly. And, you know, the recent show, the bigger shows where we do this 40-year celebration, it's 2 hours. So it's a bit of a journey for us as well. So we, you know, we feel it. And then afterwards it's like, and now what?
It's a big band.
It is a big
very
band.
Few big bands that have, you know, sort of lasted in the way that you have, that are as enduring, that have, you know, you and John's relationship have gone through phases.
Yes. Happily divorced and very, very close friends.
Yes, he says delicately. I mean, to survive all of that does say something.
You know, it's that the band is so unifying for us. And, you know, John and I, you know, we really are close friends, and I can sort of tell him anything. And it's that, you know, we've gone through so much together that it just, you know, it'll always connect us. It's almost like, I guess it's almost like having children, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't mean to insult parents by saying that, but it is, you know, when you have a project like that, it becomes a little bit like that, I suppose.
And it's a project that's created the soundtrack to our lives, to a country.
It's
So
very sweet of you to say
important.
that.
Claire, I'm absolutely going to ask for a photograph in just a second.
I would love one too. Thank you.
Claire Johnson, thank you so much for coming in. The lead
Pleasure's
singer.
mine.
Thank you. The lead singer of Mango Groove.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa Corporate and Investment Banking, proud sponsor of South African Auto Week 2025.
Well, I don't know about you, but for me personally, to look at American indices right now does feel like an anticlimax. The Dow Jones is down 0.13%. The Nasdaq up 0.44%. The S&P 500 is up 0.12%. Plenty to come. Aubrey Masango is next. We're back tomorrow. Good evening. It's 8 o'clock.